Morning fellas, the perennial, the dandelion of the amp world, the bread and butter of an amp tech. Well documented why. I'll give you a clue as to the problem. We're fitting one of these today. Yep, let's take a look. Okay, I've got the back panel off. Before I do anything, I'm going to let's just see if there's anything sitting on the Illinois capacitors. We are safe to poke around with our fingers. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, like I say, those warnings of shock are immediate on more modern amps are more for immediately when you've turned them off. These days most amplifiers have resistors that will drain off when you've turned them off, so but always know, check, don't assume, always know. Let's bring you in and have a look at the problem. As you say, most of the time you'll guess, but this is what happens because of one, this being an export model, it would have been shipped to Europe first, so I'll guarantee this one's still wired for 230 and not 240 in the UK, and they're always overbiased and running them like an absolute dog. So let me see if I can get you going on in here. So I will check these for leakages because at some point these are go, but this is not on the cards. We need to get this amp working first, and there's a problem. Can you see? Can you see? Bang! Overheating. Look at that. Absolutely. Sorry, let's get you in the frame. Absolutely destroyed. That must have been quite spectacular. Now, fuses. I will check these internal fuses as usual. So that's a 5 amp fuse here. What we got here? Usually I can't. So we got a 5 amp fuse here. And this one here, I don't know what the rating is on that one. I'll have to look at it. None of these have failed. You would expect, if you've got something as horrendous as that, for these to fail. First things first, we'll change this board, then we'll do the modifications. Get this out, clean it up, and do that. I don't know if you can see these too well, but these groove tubes have had a hard life. There's some interesting discoloration on there. These are Sovtek's, yeah, made in Russia. Then Groove Tube just branding them and finding the ones they like. Marked as 7, which I believe is their mid-range. That's more their middle. They're no better than anyone else's, to be honest. They're just Sovtek's, which are very good EL84s. Some people like the JJs, but I find the JJs have a higher failure rate. They might sound a little bit more pizzazzy, but EL84s, I would, like a lot of my power tubes, a lot, you know, when it comes to 6L6s, EL84s, I like the Sovtek's much better. So what we need to do, disconnect this, undo this board, lift it out, and then desolder all these ribbons. Now, for noise issues, the positioning of these ribbons is really important. It's like lead dress and isolation. There was a page on the net, I can't remember the name of it now, but if you've worked on a Blues Junior and you've Googled it, you'll find it. And there is like a very specific arrangement of these ribbons for the best noise floor. Oh, a little tip, if you're worried about, because obviously some capacitors have a memory and they can charge back up. Even though they're off the power, they'll build back a charge. Sometimes if I've got an amp, I will test that usually on an amp. I will put a meter on after switching off and you'll see the voltage go down and then it'll come back up again. If I've got an amp that's particularly likes to come up high, what I do, I will literally take a little alligator lead, keep it out of my work, but I will connect one to the chassis and then just connect the other end to the positive of one of the capacitors, of one of the filter caps. I'll show you what I've done here. So yeah, you'd go from the positive and one of them, well, you connect the chassis ground first, and then obviously you can use the resistor trick first if you like, but then I'll leave those connected while I'm working. That way you won't get a nasty surprise. But you must remember to take that out before you put the power back on. Well, normally it will just blow a fuse. I always run my amps back up on a variac after I've done any work in case I've done something silly. I will see immediately on the amp, how many amps it's pulling, and that will tell me if I've made a boo-boo. Okay, we're back. Soldered in this board so I can see what I'm doing. I'll put a link in the description down below. If you're based in the UK, you might have seen them already if you had this problem, but these are really nice boards. They're thick PCB, double-sided as well, nice big thick copper traces, nice solder points on the power tubes. They actually separate. There's a space, I don't know if you can see it through there, there's actually a space. They physically separate those contacts as well, get some air between them for insulation. And these I've had no problems with. This one also has a bias adjust pot, which you will see on the other side shortly, but we have to replace R52, I believe it's a 22k resistor. We're going to replace that, and then that will just bring us in the range where we can adjust the bias, and you also get the test points as well. Brilliant little board, solves all the issues really, and a good upgrade to do if you have a Blues Junior and you're based in the UK or even the US. But yeah, find a good replacement, but they're out there. Okay, so I've just pushed the board back down. I haven't put the nuts on yet, so yeah, there it goes, that's it sits. The lead dress is quite important on the Blues Junior. You kind of want to have it going up and then into the board, so it keeps it away from as much as you can and also gets nearer the shielding on the outside. What I will say, what we're going to do, so R52 is this thing here. Now, this job the cost needs to be kept to a minimum. Now, if this was my own amp, yes, I would take this entire board out and unsolder it from the bottom. But what we are going to do, R52, what we do, we snip the wires as close as we can to the actual resistor. We're going to clip that out, and that will give us we can bend the wires out so they stick out, and that gives us something to solder in the replacement resistor for the biasing. Some people may balk at the idea, but say that's going to add another hour or so labour onto the cost of the job, and we're trying to keep this down, and there's nothing wrong with doing it. As long as you're quick and you keep the heat away from the board, you're not going to damage the where it's soldered behind the board. Okay, shoot me if you want, I don't care. This is to keep the cost down a little bit, and it's absolutely fine. Okay, let me give it a pointer. So R52 22k resistor has now been changed to a 56k resistor. So what I like to do on a Blues Junior is I snip all the cable ties off, and then what we do, we twist all the AC lines as we run them into their respective locations. So you unplug a pair, undo them, get them all twisted, just to reduce some of the noise. But right, so the 230 to 240 conversion, see this black and white cable going to the switch. We're going to swap this one with the black one, this is plain black one, going to P6. So I've not cable tied any of these just yet. What we're going to do, we're going to do the first power up. So I've connected the speaker, but we're going to do it with no tubes in. We're going to switch on the variac. We'll bring her up, but what we're going to do, we're just going to see that I haven't made any boo-boos. It will show up pretty quick on here. Oh, what we can do, we can see how many amps it's pulling. Now, if there's a short or I've done something stupid, the amps will rocket. It'll be pulling too many. Or it's at full voltage, but yeah. Obviously, there's no tube, so it's not really going to pull much going on in there. We'll just check what we've got on the B plus. We've got 331 volts. We're at 226. So let's just put that up to 240. So at 240 volts on the variac, it's pulling 0.15 of an amp, which is about where you want. And we've got 350 volts on the B plus, which is about what we want. And now put some valves in there. Yeah, unfortunately there's no clipping point, so I can't leave the probes connected whilst doing this. So one shortcoming of the board, and like I say, what the test point for V5 is quite easy to get at, but V4 is kind of tucked under the ribbon cables. Let me just show you. So yeah, we've got bias test points. Got one, where are you? Just there, and then the other one hidden just back there, which you can get to with a probe, but it's just a little bit awkward. So bear in mind that. One thing I'm going to buy some probes for the smaller sockets, because it makes life a hell of a lot easier. So we're 168 volts, pulling just over 0.1 of an amp. And we've got some output. We've got some noise. Right, let's check the B plus. So at the first node it's 327. Let's check the plate, which is pin 7. So you count around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it's 325 on the plates. Let's check the other one. 987. 24. 325. Slight imbalance there. We'll check the biases now. 324. 326. So, okay. Work on 326. So for our plate voltages, we need it down to be sort of around the 25 milliamp mark. So we need to turn down the bias. Those bad boys were hot. Okay, so they're set to 24, around 25. That's 70% on a class AB, which is what this is. These are not class A. Class A cathode biased amps. Yeah, let's bring that down just a little bit more, and then we'll let it soak and see if she drifts off at all. We're approaching minimum bias voltage here. Right. Actually, what I'm going to turn it down right down to minimum. And she's still pulling 25. And that one's put in 24, but that's fine, that's fine. So we'll leave it on for about half an hour or so and come back and just double check where they are. Okay, it's been a little while, had a bit of a coffee, still got some left. Let's check what we've got on the tubes now. Right, so V5, we've got 24.8 milliamps. And on V4 we've got 23.4, so 1 milliamp difference. That's matched. So these aren't a brand new pair of tubes. This is something out of an old. I bought some whole bunch of tubes, and these ones were matched up. Yeah, and they sound good. Again, this is a customer who doesn't have a shitload of money, want to try and keep the cost down. So now we've got the bias control, we can keep these under control. These valves should last a lot longer than they would normally in a Blues Junior. A Blues Junior would eat them in standard form. But this will give us way more life, make it such a much more reliable amp. One thing I might do, whilst it's on the, which is something I do to a lot of Blues Juniors, is the bare minimum mod is to snip that bloody bright cap on it. It doesn't need it. I mean, your treble control, you have to have it wound down to like 3 or 4. You never go past 5, no matter where you've set the bloody thing. So I think we'll snip the bright cap. Looking at this, the schematic, if it were mine, I'd go through. I've got a Blues, yeah. I might actually do a video. I might do some bit more extent. I've modded it before, but I might go a bit more extensive on it and do a video on that. So yeah, what I was saying. If you look at the circuit diagram of a Blues Junior, this is a Mark III, and especially the Mark III, and it's fairly common for most of them. The coupling caps on them are 0.0022. They're very aggressive high-pass filters, and there's so much high end in the front of the amp, and then just before it hits the master volume, it has a low-pass filter, and it's set somewhere between 250 or 300 hertz. Low pass, it just cuts off everything above that, and it literally makes me sound like this. So the way I might voice one is actually revoice it so there's more low end in the preamp, get rid of that low pass filter before the master, and it should make it sound a hell of a lot more natural. But again, this is minimal. I can just go in here and snip the leg on C3 on this, on the bright cap, just lift it, and that way they'll find it much more range just by doing that one simple mod. Anyone can do that. That's one thing I would recommend to do on a Blues Junior. They're just so bright. There's no need, especially using a Telly or a Strat as well. It's just lunacy. But yeah, this job is pretty much done and dusted. So yeah, that's changing a board on a Blues Junior. The boards in the UK are about 22, 25 pounds depending. You can get them without the BIOS pot, but you're only saving like £2 or £3. I would pump the few more pounds, get the BIOS adjustment, and then you will have a great basis for an amplifier. A Blues Junior is an exercise in cost cutting. They really are. But the potential is of a really good amp. My Blues Junior, I've changed the speaker to the Celestion V type, which I think a lot of Fenders now come with anyway. Nice cheap Celestion, sounds really good though. Kind of like a vintage 30 without that horrid mid spike. That helps warm up these amps as well. It's one of my favourite grab and go, just in one box amps. Job's a good one. Shall we hear it now? I missed one thing. I came back and realised when I was twisting the cables, I missed one of the most important ones when we put the board back in. It's these two green ones coming from the main board down into there. They're the heater wires. So I desoldered them, put them out, and then put, where are we? Go backwards. This one here. Put a little twist on them, going into the board for the heaters, for the valves. That's it. I will button it up, and now we'll go and listen to it.